Guys, welcome to another episode of A Truth Bump. Last session, we were speaking about space. I'd love to continue this conversation because there's just so much more to converse about this topic of space. So if in the last session I spoke about space, in this session I want to talk about holding space and really what that means. My intention here is to give you something that I guess is the application of what we spoke about in the last session. So hope you guys are well. Hope you've really comprehended, integrated somewhat the session on space. Again, if you haven't listened to it twice, recommend doing that, especially if we're going into converse more about that topic. So let's get into it, shall we? So just to recap in the last session, when we're talking about space, we're really talking about the moment. We're speaking about the emptiness, the fullness of the emptiness. We're speaking about the real love, and we're speaking about infinity. So, one of the things I left you with expanding your space. Expanding your space has all got to do with you deepening your connection with yourself, doing the work, if you like, self-realizing we spoke about. And it's really hard and difficult to self-realize when you've got a lot of things going on. I understand that. Now, I've been there. And it's really difficult to, expand your space when you've got a lot of things taking up your space. So, that's the difficulty here. So what I'd love to just connect with you guys about in this session is how to let go of some of those things that are taking up space. And this is the term that I continuously use, and that's, holding space. And I use this in, whether it's holding space for your circumstances or for your story, but also it's actually what I do when I train my facilitators. What I train them to do is actually hold space for an individual or a group who are going through a process. And so it's not just, this is not something that I just apply in my everyday life. There is also holding space for your own emotions and your own personal process. And if you go back to reclaiming power, that's what you're actually doing. When you're reclaiming power, the first thing I'm saying is that, you need to accept. And to accept, what are we accepting? We're accepting how we feel. We're accepting our process. Most people think that, I'm accepting the story. Well, that's the intellectual part of it. But to actually allow yourself to process through the emotions, you need to accept the emotions. But how do you accept? And again, I would have shared this in Reclaiming Power, and if I haven't, it's just an amazing addition to it. The way we accept something is we allow it to be. Okay, because accepting or love, the real love, the energy of it is open. In Reclaiming Power, I talk about it's an open energy, and you're embracing. It's like when you haven't seen someone for a long time, and you're at the airport picking him up. I give that example. You open up and you embrace them. So very difficult to embrace an emotion that you really dislike. There is an emotion, whether it's fear or anxiety or, just feeling reserved or, anything that you don't like, jealousy or whatever emotion that you have. It's very difficult to actually embrace those emotions, but that is the very thing that needs to be done. You need to, because when you're resisting the emotion, what you're doing is actually giving it power. Resistance is your closed energy. Anyway, I don't mean to turn this into reclaiming power, but I'm just reverting back to that really quickly just to give you a reference point. But our greatest ability to reclaim power, our greatest ability to connect to an emotion that's there and allow us to go through it. Because as though, like, it's not like you can go around it. Going around an emotion is like band-aiding it. It's just, it's finding a way to make yourself feel better for now. That's going around it. But ultimately, as you progress in your journey, so does the emotion. The emotion goes with you. So the idea here is to, when you find an emotion, or again, this is not just about emotion. This is about, it could be me coaching a client. It could be your circumstances that you're experiencing. Whether you dislike them or like them, it's the same. And you think to yourself, well, hang on, I don't want to get rid of the emotions that I like. Well, you don't want to give power to them either, because if there's an emotion you like, then what happens is you try to keep it. But the emotions that you're having is an emotion that you're experiencing right now in the moment. They say in spiritual teachings, this too shall pass. Well, what happens is when you have a positive emotion, you try to hold on to it, you try to keep it. And then what happens is then you start to live in the past. You're no longer in the present moment. So everything shall pass. Everything is yours for this moment. Once the moment is gone, it's not yours. If it's still there, then it's yours. If it's not, you let it go. So the way that I share or teach my facilitators in regards to giving space to something is by allowing it to be. That's the key word there. I want to highlight that. It's allowing it to be. So in other words, you're not trying to fix it. You're not trying to improve it. You're not trying to change it, or you're not trying to get rid of it. The fix, improve, change, or get rid of, right? Which is the old story. It's the old paradigm, where you're continuously looking for your story to fix, improve, or change, or get rid of something, or it's or hold on to something if it's not, get rid of it. All right, that's the old paradigm. That doesn't work. That's why a lot of people are on this journey, because they realize it's because all they did when it was fixing, improving, or changing was just change the form of it. The problem didn't go away. The insecurity didn't change. And so anyway, I'm speaking to the converted here, so I don't need to go into that. But when it comes to, and I'll give this example in how I coach someone, whether it's a retreat that I'm running, or it's an individual that I'm coaching, or a group. The biggest thing that I do is I trust the process, and that allows me to be in a state where I'm allowing whatever is showing up in that process to be. So again, if you taking notes with these recordings, which you should be doing only the second time you're listening to it, by the way, the first time you just want to sit and listen, write that word, allow it to be. Okay, because that's what you're doing. When I'm coaching or facilitating a retreat, I'm trusting the process, right? And the process is like it's got a life of its own, and it's sometimes people call it surrender. You're surrendering to what is. Now, I want to make sure that we're clear. Surrendering is not giving up. It's not. You're basically giving up the need of control. It's if anything, the need of, because the part of you that needs to be in control is the part of you that doesn't have it. That's why it needs to be in control. The part of you that has control, it's the ocean. It's, if you like, it doesn't need or look for control because it has it. It's quite simple, really. So yes, I give up the part of me that needs to be in control. That's the surrender. Some people will relate to the word to surrender. So again, different between surrender and giving up is that you're giving up the need of control. So The biggest thing that I do in this process is I allow it to be. And the moment I'm allowing something to be, I immediately feel this space around the process. I feel this space around the individual. Just let's take a side note here, just for a sec, and think about something that it's something that is bothering you. It's taking up space. And sometimes something that's taking up space is not necessarily something that's annoying you. It's something that you really need. I really need to pay my rent. I really need to, pay these bills, and I really don't have the money. And of course, that need then consumes space from you. So, I've had people in my coaching, and I've asked them this one question, and maybe you can ask this question to yourself when you're in the similar circumstance. And the question is, what if you no longer needed that? Now, I know, and in fact, I think I do have a guided meditation where I actually take people through that process, I'll double check, and if we do, I'll put it on in the notes of this recording, and I'll get you guys to go through that guided meditation. If not, well, here it is. The process is basically asking yourself the question. Now, I know you need it. Like, I know you look in the story and go, I need this. I need this change. I need to pay these bills. I get it. There's things in your life that you need, but I'm not trying to get rid of the need here. All I'm doing is posing the question that you can pose to yourself, which is, what does it feel like if you no longer needed that to happen? What does it feel like if you no longer needed to pay for that? What does it feel like if you no longer needed to feel that emotion? Just ask yourself that question. And if you're open and honest with yourself, and by honest, I mean, you're not trying to change it. You're just asking an open question to yourself. What does it feel like if I no longer needed to, whatever it is that you're looking to fix, improve, change, or keep, right? What does it feel like if I no longer need it? When I do this with my clients, the almost immediately, if they can just ask the question without even trying to look for the answer, just what does it feel like? They just pose a question, like it's what does it feel like if you no longer needed to change that? Immediately, they describe what it feels like to have space. Immediately. And I go, isn't that interesting? Because you want that to be fixed, improved, or changed, or keep that, right? In order for you to feel what it is that you're feeling right now. You want to fix, improve, or change so you can feel space. But isn't it interesting that you felt the space right there without that changing? All you did was just ask yourself the question, well, what does it feel like if I no longer needed to change that? And immediately you felt this expansion, and you feel this space. Now, what you're feeling there, right, is exactly what I'm describing to you, to allow it to be. Because if you can allow something to be, whether it's a story, whether it's an emotion, it's any kind of restriction, and any kind of something that's amazing. And again, if something's amazing, when you're allowing it to be, you're allowing it to be, and you're also allowing it to not to be. It's just you're allowing it. Right? The biggest thing that you feel when you allow something to be is space. So when I'm coaching a client, I can see the pain maybe they're going through. I can feel their pain, right? As a coach, as a mentor, most people think they're here to fix, improve, or give them some kind of solutions to manage or at least band-aid that pain so they don't have to be living with that pain. My work is different. I allow them to be in the pain as though that there is nothing wrong with that, because if the pain was not meant to be there, they wouldn't have been, if they weren't meant to be feeling the pain, they would never be having that pain in the first place. So the fact that they're having the pain is that it's meant to be there. Now, I also know it's temporary. It's not forever. So I allow them to feel that pain. I allow that there's nothing wrong. The only way I can heal someone is with love, with the real love. Well, that real love doesn't feel sorry as though, well, they shouldn't be feeling that pain or that should have never happened to them. But it did. And if it wasn't meant to, it wouldn't have happened. So the biggest thing that and I'm going into more of my coaching here and how I do my work, but it's the same process. If I'm looking at something for me personally, I allow it to be, whether it's an emotion I'm feeling or a circumstance that I'm going through, I allow it to be. I allow it to be means I allow it to be there. I'm not looking to fix, improve, or change that, if you like. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that lands somewhere, and I invite you to go and actually ponder for yourself and write that. What does it mean for you to allow something to be, and look at some of the things that you're going through in your life, and ask yourself the question, like, what does it feel like if I just allowed this to be here? I didn't need to move it. I didn't need to react to it. I didn't need to, have an emotional reaction to it even. What does it feel like if I can just allow this to be? And immediately, you're shifting from the drop of the ocean to a wave of the ocean, or ultimately to the ocean. Your view, your perspective immediately changes. And suddenly within that space, what you feel is creativity. You feel inspiration. You feel courage. You feel love. What do you think all those things are going to do to your little problem that you're having before? It's like, sometimes people would want to change their perspective. They look back at the earth from galaxies away. If you look back at the earth and you go, well, I'm on this one little dot and my little problem is like a speck of sand of of all the sand in the entire world. This speck of sand. And that kind of puts things into perspective, and you think to yourself, well, my problem is not that big, right? But that's what happens when you allow something to be and you feel the space around the so-called problem or the story. When you're allowing something to be, you suddenly feel that space. It puts things into perspective. Your view changes. Who is viewing changes. You're no longer the drop. You're no longer in fear. And it doesn't mean there is no, like, there's still, like, I understand the story hasn't changed yet, but your view of the story immediately changes. Like I said, you have more creativity, you feel courage. Sometimes people look at you, some of the things that you've done, or sometimes you look at some of the things that other people have done and you go, where do they find that courage? It's within the space. The love, acceptance, compassion. It's all within that space. Okay? So the way to tap into that space is there is something consuming space. Let whatever you think that is consuming space to be there. Allow it to be. Now, I will give you something further in relation to applying this, but I'm just would love for you to comprehend what I'm saying at this point when I say allow it to be. Okay? Because if you're not allowing it to be, then what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? You're trying to fix it. You're trying to improve it. You're trying to change it. You're trying to get rid of it. But the part of you that's trying to fix, improve, or change it is the drop. The moment your attention goes on something and you think this shouldn't be there, this shouldn't have happened, the part of you that thinks that is the drop. The moment you go and place your attention on the so-called problem, all right, the so-called thing that you're addicted and attached to keeping, or the thing that you're trying to get rid of, the fix, improve, or change, or get rid of, the moment you do that, you become the drop. And it then consumes space. So what is the opposite to doing that? You will, instead of trying to fix it, improve it, change it, or get rid of it, or hold on to it and control it, well, you just allow it to be. And again, some people will relate to that as being using that word surrender. You do whatever what feels true for you. For me, I just allow it to be. There's nothing I need to do here. I just allow it to be. And the moment I do that, I feel space, guys. I feel space. Whether it's I'm coaching a client, I start to see what's really going on, and I feel inspiration and a knowing. You know, if I'm coaching a client, I suddenly I know, and I know what to say, and I feel inspired to share something. They're the two things. They're the two things that I find in that space, you know, that then come in the form of love, creativity, courage, some of the things that I just mentioned before. But it's just, I feel moved, and that's the inspiration. And I feel just a knowing. I just know. I know that this is going to work out. I know that this is going to work out. I know the story will change. I know what the answer is for that person who's looking. You know, whether it's a coaching client. I mean, you think about it. You know, in your time as a human being, but in your time, like how many times have you actually? You know, a friend has come to you in need, and this is for those who aren't, you know, facilitators or coaches or mentors, you know, but, you know, a friend has come to you, you know, or your son or daughter or someone that you care about has come to you, and they've needed your help with something, and there's a problem that they're going through, and as they're telling you this problem, like you're just thinking, oh my God, like you know, there's been so many times like, well, you think I don't even know how to help them, but you listen. And what you're doing when you're listening is you're allowing it to be, right? And within listening, suddenly you just see the solution, or, you know, you know, and the solution could just be giving him a hug, right? But you give him advice, and then you think to yourself, where did that come from? How did I know that? That's what I'm talking about. Because when you're compassionate, when you're sitting there and actually listening, you know, and men struggle with this because when they're listening to, especially, you know, I'm generalizing here, guys, sorry, but when guys listen to their wives or their girlfriends or whatever, and they're telling them about a problem, immediately they're thinking and receiving and integrating it in their head, and they're looking for a solution to fix, improve, or change, or help them. But that's not the answer. You know, if you actually had the ability to actually listening to someone without the need of having to come up with a solution, or fixing, improving, or changing, or getting rid of whatever it is they're talking about, right there, listening is holding space. If you're truly, genuinely listening, you will hear. You will hear the solution. You will see the you know, it will move you. And you know, you don't have to be a coach to understand this. There's so many of you who have, you know, maybe you've been on the opposite side of this, and you've gone to someone who you don't normally think would have the solution for you. And you just found yourself in conversing with them about a problem, and then suddenly they're just, you know, what they did for you, you know, what they shared with you, how they opened up to you, you're just like, wow, how did that person do that? It's the same. So what I'm sharing with you is not that far out there. There is so many times you've actually experienced this in your life, whether it's somebody giving you that space, or if it's you giving that space to someone else. But if you look at it and look at your process, all right, you know, there is a point where you slip away from trying to fix, improve, or change, and you're just being there, you know, you're being there for them. Well, how do you be there for someone? You be there and you allow them to be. What are you doing there? You are giving them space. So I hope this has given you some reference point of how you've experienced that somewhere in your life. Well, here's the thing. I do that to not just my friends or my clients. I do that to my process, to, it's my business. I trust the process. And when I trust the process, I don't need to fix, improve, or change it. When I trust the process or I trust what's unfolding in the story, I'm not becoming small, little Amir, trying to fix, improve, or change or look for little tiny solutions, because little Amir can only find little tiny solutions. The first thing I do is I trust the process. I allow it to be. And before I know it, it's like, you're catching a wave and the wave picks you up. And solutions, ideas, actions. Before you know it, you're taking an action that you don't even remember deciding to take that action. You picked up the phone call, you did this, you did that, and then you just think to yourself, it just was so effortless because it wasn't a little drop. The drop has caught a wave. Do you understand? So I hope that lands. I mean, I did want to take this conversation a little bit deeper, and it's just to give you something so you can apply yourself when it comes to actually giving space. The more you have the capacity to give space, the more space you have to give. It's the same when you have the capacity to truly love, not the love that's out of need. All right, the real love, the more love you have to give. And it's the same. The more you have space, the more you have the ability to give space, allow something to be, the more space there is. So ultimately, the person's life that's going to change mostly is yourself. It's your life. But anyone who comes in contact with you'll make an impact in their lives, because anyone who has the ability to hold space for themselves or for others truly makes an impact in the people's lives around them. So I would like to share with you one more thing, and this is more of a mantra, I like to call it anyway, and it's something because if you, again, go back to reclaiming power, the reason you allow something to be, or the reason you embrace something for what it is, whether it's a pain or whatever, is because when you allow something to be, your energy is no longer closed, it's open, and that's the only time you can actually place your attention on the truth. Because in the reclaiming power process, the idea is to become open to the emotions, open to whatever you think is actually, you've got your power in, you're opening up, you're feeling the emotions. But the whole point of feeling the emotions or becoming completely open is so you can go, well, what's the truth? What's the truth? And some people have different ways of placing their attention on the truth. But the whole point of reclaiming power, I don't sit there every day feeling an emotion that I need to reclaim power in. A lot of the times there's really not much motion in the ocean, if you like. It's quite calm. It's quite open. So I can simply say, well, what's the truth? If I'm experiencing some form of limitation, I go, well, what's the real truth here, Amir? And that's the whole point. It's anytime you're closed, you can't say what's the truth, because the truth that you will come up with is intellectualized. And that's not the truth. It's only a version of it. A truth is something that you experience. You can't intellectualize it. So again, this is why we open up. So in this process of allowing something to be and giving space to something, it's the same for you to be able to actually go, well, what's the truth? The biggest way for me to be able to give the biggest space to something, whether it's to myself or to another or to a circumstance, is for that space to come from the truth. So here's the question, or here's the mantra that I would like to leave with you guys, and you can definitely write this down and put it somewhere, carry it with yourself in your pocket, and pull it out as many times as you can, and actually really go through this. I share this process, when I'm helping someone to empty their mind. When we talk about, getting into a pondering state, I've shared it with you guys before, and that was, there's nowhere to be, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to accomplish, and there's nothing to figure out. So with this is going to have an addition to it. And so it's kind of something slash between a mantra and an affirmation. And it's your ability to actually pose the question, but at the same time, affirm the truth, realize the truth. So here it is. This is what you'll say to yourself. There's nowhere to be. I am here. There's nothing to do. I am whole. There's nothing to accomplish. I am enough. There's nothing to figure out. I am knowing. I'll leave that with you. I'll say it to you one more time in case you're writing down, and you don't need to rewind this. There's nowhere to be. I am here. There's nothing to do. I am whole. There's nothing to accomplish. I am enough. There's nothing to figure out. I am knowing. I'll leave that with you, and I encourage you to actually use that, and especially when you're noticing there is something in your life that is continuously taking up space from you, right there, that's when you want to pull this out, because when you are nowhere to be, nothing to do, nothing to accomplish, nothing to figure out, what is your state of mind? Allowing it to be. What you're saying to yourself is, there's nothing for me, the little me here. There's nowhere for the little me to be other than where I am right now. I am here. There's nothing for the little me here to do. I am whole. There's so much that you're trying to do because you feel not whole. There's nothing for the little me here to accomplish. I am enough. There's nothing for the little me here to figure out. I am all-knowing. And in that state right there, all you feel is space, the expansiveness. And within that space, allow yourself to then be moved by inspiration or by the knowing. And that's what I live by. If I'm not being moved by inspiration or the knowing, then what am I being moved by, or what are you being moved by? The need, the fear, the little me, its masterful skill, the little you, is manipulation. That's why I always say you're either manifesting or you're manipulating, because the real you is manifesting. The little you, the part that is the illusion, is always manipulating. So try that out, guys. I'll leave it with you. Write that down somewhere. And in addition to that, I'll see if I can find a recording that I have recorded in the past where you're actually allowing something to be and you're feeling that space by asking the question, well, what does it feel like if I no longer need to do whatever it is that is consuming space for you? What does it feel like? All you're doing is feeling the space around the very thing that is currently sucking and consuming space. What does it feel like if I no longer need it? And you don't even need the meditation, to be honest, because that's the process right there. All right. But what does it feel like if I no longer needed to change this? to fix this, to keep this, to improve this, to get rid of this. All those things that I just listed are things, it's how whatever that your item is consuming space from you. What does it feel like if I no longer need it to do that? Bang, space. You're in the space now. Look for the inspiration and the knowing, and only move with that. Because when you're moving with inspiration and knowing, you're moving with love, the real love. See you guys next week.